Welcome to the Black Duck Revival Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Wilkins. I'm excited to have you join me as I speak with a fascinating collection of folks, all of whom have in common that they've made a way for themselves by finding an intersection between thoughtful consideration and the tactile work of getting their hands dirty. This is an examination of intention, capability, and craft. It's where philosophy meets the blue-collar work ethic and where I find real value. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Black Duck Revival Podcast. It's been quite some time, but I wanted to avail myself of an opportunity. We're joined today by one Dale Billingsley from the state of Iowa, and just from watching his YouTube videos, I knew that he was here in Arkansas, and so I wanted to make sure I took advantage of an opportunity to talk to this gentleman. Dale is a professional trapper, and that's not like the new slang trapping. That's like the old school trapping, mountain man style. We're talking about running steel for all manner of things, but specifically here, I guess right now, is kind of water trapping. So beavers and otters, muskrats occasionally. But Mr. Dale, thank you so much for letting me come down and visit you here at your trapping camp.
Well, I appreciate you being here, John. Thank you.
Well, I guess let's just start with, I guess trapping today, like in modernity, it's almost like a little bit of an antiquated skill set. We were talking before we started recording about the transference of skills that comes from it, but I think we'll talk more about that and specifically how it kind of transfers to, say hunting, reading sign and stuff. But I would also say maybe a way of looking at the world, like a way of like reading sign. And I've noticed it the more, like we were talking about gator hunting and stuff, and every body of water I've been driving by since September, I'm thinking about where there could be an alligator, if there is one there. But yeah, so like I said, you're from Iowa.
Right.
Is that where you're from originally?
Yeah. Born and raised southeast Iowa. Haven't moved, haven't left, other than just to go somewhere and trap. And then when I was younger, I rodeoed. So been all over the Midwest and everywhere. Just have trapped in, seven states, I think. Have trained trappers, all over the country, not only through YouTube, but also through personal instructions as well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's been a great life and a great opportunity, and I'm so thankful for it every day.
So I hadn't seen this, or I guess my buddy Brad, which we'll talk about this. Me and my buddy Brad Green, every year we do this thing that we call Beaver Fest, and I know you do a Beaver mm-hmm. Fest too. But when we do Beaver Fest, it's just us hanging out and trapping, and that was good, man. Yeah, I don't think anyone would know. Dale is just spitting Dale dips, and I'd say it's kind of like one of your trademarks in your videos, is that you always got some chaw in there. But we were talking about if he could pull off dipping while we had these microphones on. But Brad is the one who told me that, I guess maybe when you were at the Arkansas Trappers Convention this year, you talked about that you left school when you were like 17.
Yeah, when I was 17, I wasn't going to graduate because I didn't have enough credits.
Okay.
Simply because I didn't want to be in school.
Sure.
I just didn't want to be there. There was other things out there that I had to go do, and school just wasn't part of it. So 2 weeks into my senior year, they called me into the office, and they said, look, you don't have enough credits. You're not going to get to graduate. And I said, well, then there ain't no sense in me wasting any more time. So walked to my locker, grabbed my books, walked into the principal's office, threw them on his desk, walked out, got my truck, left, never looked back. Took off to be a cowboy and a trapper and a wolf of the world, and that's pretty much what I did. Trapped all that fall there at home. Made my first trip to South Arkansas trapping beaver then, that winter, and I never stopped, never looked back.
So I'm assuming that you grew up, you started trapping when you were a kid?
Yeah, my dad started me, my dad trapped, my uncles all trapped, and then grew up where I grew up, had the opportunity to be in southeast Iowa is and a lot of your viewers have probably never heard of him, but he was at the time he was a very famous trapper and lure maker from that area was Bill Nelson. Where we lived was only 5.5 miles from where Bill lived, and Bill was already gone by the time I came around, but growing up, he was, I heard all the stories and listened to him intently, and he was one of my heroes. I wanted to be like Bill Nelson. He took off and was gone for 2 years, left his wife in Farmington, Iowa, and he took off for 2 years to California to trap marten.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. He actually is the one who discovered the subspecies of marten called the Humboldt marten in the Sierras of California. So, it just, everything, the opportunity was all there, everything just kind of fell into place for me, and you couldn't have wrote it out on a paper and had it come out any better than what it did for me,
So you started coming down south when you were like 17, 18
I was
years old?
17. Made my first trip down here. Yes, sir.
You mind me asking how old you are now?
I'm 53.
Okay. So 53, so that means you're born in 72?
72.
Okay.
Yep.
Was there still money to be made on good money on pelts back
then? Through the mid 90s up into the early 2000s, yeah. I never thought I'd see another broke day. And I know that sounds arrogant when I say that, but that's I say it with all sincerity. At that time, I could make between 15 and 20,000 in 6 months of trapping, where there were people working in a factory that wasn't making that a year.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would think in the early 90s, $20,000.
That was a lot of money.
Yeah, that'd go a long way.
Yeah,
man.
That was a lot of money.
I've had years of my life where I did not make $20,000.
No, absolutely.
And we should talk. That's worth bringing up to folks, because again, I think the folks that listen to this podcast, I think a lot of them do hunt and fish, but there's also, I think, a pretty large subsect of people who just are. Maybe they're interested in it in more of a vicarious nature. And so I don't think everyone, even folks that hunt and fish, would understand that there used to be like very good money in trapping and selling pelts, and what I have heard is that, back in the 70s, like a northern, and there's usually like considered a quality difference, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, no.
With
you're absolutely right.
Northern pelts are usually more desirable because it gets colder, they're thicker, they're, more prime, I guess you'd say. And we have thinner, just the animals don't have to have as much fur to stay warm here in the South.
What it is, I don't mean to interrupt you, Jonathan,
please.
But what it is, your fur down here is heavier leathered and lighter furred.
Okay.
And it's what it is. They get prime just like anywhere else in the world, in the United States or in the world for that matter. They prime, but they're short napped.
Okay.
Where our northern fur, and my fur isn't as good as what it is, say, in Minnesota, is a little thicker and a little deeper. Okay. Where your fur is a little shorter, but it's still full. It still gets prime just like anywhere else. They're just heavier leathered and lighter furred.
Okay. And I had someone tell me that, and I've actually, someone told me this years ago, and I've repeated it because I thought it was an interesting fact, and you might be able to correct me. But I was told that in the 70s that, that's kind of when China was moving from like a Maoist, hardcore communist to some elements of capitalism, right? And so there started being like an economic upturn there. And so in the 70s, like Southern furs were more valuable because I guess Chinese women, being generally smaller statured, they didn't want as heavy a fur as it might have been popular, say, in Russia or something. So like Southern raccoons had like a really good price because of that fur market.
The Southern raccoon is what's known as a coat coon.
Okay.
That is what coats are actually made of, is a Southern raccoon. My coon in my country is way too heavy to make a full coat out of, so they use those for trim around the collars, down the front, around the cuffs on the sleeves. That's where our coon come into play. So yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The southern coon definitely has a place in the fur market. It's just right at this point in time, there is not a designer. And there's another thing, if I get to rambling, you'll have to stop me.
Dude, I love a ramble. Please go.
A lot of trappers now, especially today's trappers, think that, in order for us to have a raccoon market again, we just need to stop trapping raccoon. And it'll be a supply and demand thing.
Okay.
And that could not be any further from the truth. They don't understand that our markets are actually set by the fashion industry. It's whatever's in style. That's what sets our markets.
Okay.
So it just so happens that right at this point in time, there is not a manufacturer, there is not a designer that's doing much with raccoon. That's why they're so cheap right now. If we could ever get raccoon fur on the runway again, it'll be a bottomless pit. Especially if we could ever get, as you said earlier, if we could ever get China opened up and get them back on their feet again, because that's where the majority of our coon especially go to China. Back in the day, back through the mid-90s and into the early 2000s, it was going into Russia. And it was going into Russia through Greece. The Greeks were actually buying the raccoon and then turning around and reselling them to Russia. So it's not just a regional thing, say in the United States. Fur is a world thing. It really is. It's a world. There's not a place where fur isn't needed. Whether it's out of luxury or whether it's out of necessity, it's always needed.
There's some irony there too, that you've got, like we were talking about, like you've got these like crusty old trappers, and they're so directly tied to like runway modeling, right? But does the U.S. provide most of the fur for the world?
Most of the fur comes from the United States. Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Is that just because of like we've got that North American wildlife model? We have the opportunity.
That's
to trap?
A lot of it. Yes, that is a lot of it. Now, there are mink ranches all over the world as well, but since COVID, they went through and killed a lot of the mink because they carry COVID as well. So, and part of that, too, was a political deal, because trapping is under the gun all the time from the antis. It's so political. A lot of countries such as Poland and Denmark and those places, they saw that as a way to get rid of fur ranching. So we're just going to wipe out the mink, and then that stops the fur ranching in those countries.
And then I guess what would be like fur animals that would be farmed would be like mink and fox?
Mink and fox, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then we have the fin coon, which is actually a canine, but their fur is patterned and colored as a raccoon. Is
that those are like raccoon dogs?
Yes, raccoon dogs.
Okay.
Yes,
yeah. And those are like in Asia. Right?
Asia, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Man. So, yeah, and I guess that is something. And I've seen this just with hunting, right? Like most people, I think when they've done surveys and stuff, most Americans say they approve of hunting when it comes to hunting for sustenance, like people that are eating the meat, right?
Right.
And then as it goes towards and this is a complicated term as well, but as it goes towards what folks consider trophy hunting, there's like approval falls off.
Right.
And then I think a lot of people, and I was raised this way because I didn't come from a family that folks didn't hunt, like we didn't have guns in the house, anything like that. And, the idea that like trapping was incredibly cruel, that if you trapped an animal, they were going to chew their foot off. And so I think a lot of people have that idea about trapping and fur in general. And then I guess like in the 80s, there was a lot of that, like throwing paint on people and stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So that's probably worth, and I do want to circle back to some more of just like what you've done since you left high school, right? But the public perception around trapping and and also like the resource, because it is different. Like with fur bears, like the primary resource on a fur bear is its skin and hair, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And that's even like with wanton waste laws that comes into play,
Right.
where if you kill a deer, you are legally obligated to take the shoulders, the back straps, the hams for consumption. But with a lot of fur bears, you're not.
Right. Right.
But you are required. To skin them out.
Any usable part of that animal, you are required to take.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like, I skin my beavers out and take them and have them tanned, but probably most beavers that get caught don't become table fare.
Right.
Even though they really are fantastic.
They are absolutely fantastic. But the guy that and this is going to sound really terrible to me when I say this, and I don't mean it to. The average trapper who goes out and catches a dozen, maybe 15 beaver a year, absolutely, he can use those. He can consume those.
Sure.
Then you're on the other side of it where you've got guys that are out here taking hundreds of them.
Yeah.
And you give away or you sell as many as you possibly can, but what do you do with the rest?
Yeah.
But nothing ever goes to waste in nature, as you know as well as I do. Something consumes it. Whether it's another animal, whether it's you, whether it's a friend, whatever, something consumes it.
It's is it Josie Wales where it said, it was one of those old spaghetti westerns where buzzards got to eat, same as worms.
That's right.
And then I guess, man, there's so many things I want to ask you about, and there's all these segues into it. But there's I know that and I'd like to know more about like the lure and the bait making, because you can use some of that stuff.
Absolutely. Those 5-gallon buckets you walk past as you come up the steps out here, those are all full of beaver meat for me to take back home to make bait and lure with.
And so you would take that and turn that into like a predator bait.
Right.
So for catching coyotes and fox,
coyotes, bobcats. Yep, absolutely.
Like in duck hunting, there's a ton of secrecy around call making, right? And it seems like it's very transferable. That idea of secrecy goes with like bait and lure making and trapping, right? Like people have their own recipes. Yep. There's like a few common things. And like the easiest thing is just the stuff that I've messed with, which is like taking the castor sacks and the oiled lanes out of a beaver and then just using that to catch other beaver.
Right.
Or we've thrown, and I personally have not messed very much at all with like dry land dirt hole sets, but me and my buddy Brad, we've thrown like a castor sack in a dirt hole and see if we saw like a bunch of coyotes sign around or something.
Right.
But like when you're trapping animals, right? So you've got like the meat that you could use and turn into like some sort of like tainted predator bait. You've got glands,
right,
for gland lure. You've got urine.
Yep.
Right. You got skunk essence.
Right.
Like literally the stuff that skunks spray out.
Yep.
That's got to be the gnarliest stuff that trappers mess with.
Skunk doesn't bother me. Mink glands will roll my stomach every time.
Man, a mink, I've skinned out a couple of mink, and it's strong.
Yeah, yeah. It's that sickening sweet smell. It just, mink will get me every time.
Really?
Yeah.
It's that's a weird thing too, is the smell part of it. I was telling you, this buddy of mine, Kenny, that the guy that was in that picture with that big gator, he was just texting me earlier today, and he was talking about I caught gators this year on, like I did, just like rancid chicken. I mean, basically just meat that you let go sour, right?
Right.
So I used beaver hams from Beaverfest last year. I used chicken. We killed some pigs. The biggest gator I caught on a wild boar testicle.
Yeah.
And like their lungs and stuff. And he said just watching the videos was making him sick.
Yeah.
And dude, after 3 weeks, it didn't bother me at all.
Right. Yeah. No, you sing and in the rain. You're out there and it doesn't bother you. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So let's circle back a little bit. We'll just kind of bounce around a bunch in this, but let's circle back a little bit. So you leave high school, and you said you start trapping, you start doing the rodeo circuit, right? And so I guess you're doing those seasonally, like in the winter you're trapping, and then the rest of the year you're doing rodeo stuff.
And so it all kind of went hand in hand. my dad and I and my youngest brother owned a fencing company. We custom built barbed wire, woven wire fences through the summer. We would build about 50-mile fence a year. But it being, well, you would call it self-employed, gave me the opportunity to go rodeo as well, rode bulls and bareback horses, fought bulls, funny man, set up, tear down, announced, judged. If anything that could be done as far as that end of the arena where the buck and shoots are, that's what I did. Absolutely loved it.
And I've never heard that term until you just told me that, but funny man would be like a rodeo clown.
The rodeo clown. There are bullfighters and rodeo clowns. A rodeo clown is to keep the show moving, keep the crowd entertained. If there happens to be a lull in the entertainment, then that's your job to step in, tell a joke or three, do a funny skit, an act, whatever. Bullfighter's job is to step in and protect fallen cowboys. Mm-hmm. That's their job. Years ago, it was one and the same. The bullfighter was the rodeo clown as well, which is where the term came from, rodeo clown. And they did the same job. But then as things advanced, now we have professional bullfighters and we have funny men.
Okay. Man, have you seen that clip of that? It's like maybe a year or two old, but that kid's riding a bull and he gets bucked off and he like gets knocked out and his dad jumps down on top of him
and covers him. Yes.
Dude, man,
yes.
That's like, like having a son, dude. That's like it'll like drop emotion in you, man. Because the bull comes in and tries to get him, and his father rolls over on top of him and like takes the hit. And I guess they both ended up being all right, man. But it was like some powerful. I mean, it's like some powerful life and death father-son stuff, man. Yep. That's what's interesting is I didn't grow up around. I didn't have any dealings with rodeo. I grew up in St. Louis, but from hunting and traveling, I've met quite a few people. Like going up to Oregon, I didn't realize how big rodeo stuff was up in Oregon or like Canada.
Right.
I guess in my head it was like a Texas thing.
Oh no, all over the Midwest. I've been all over the state of Missouri rodeo and in Illinois and just a lot of places. Between trapping and rodeo, I've seen a big portion of this country just because of those two things alone. I've been to some pretty cool places and I've been to some beautiful places.
Yeah. It is weird how, and like I told you, I played music for a long time. So kind of in my 20s, I was in a van driving around the country. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like I didn't, what it kind of showed me was because you drive all day and then, you were up all night long and you were playing house shows in basements and in bars and stuff. And it was like everything was dark all the time. But it did kind of show me that like you go to all these different places and there's like stylistic differences, but everyone's pretty much trying to do the same thing, right?
Yep, pretty much.
They're like working a job. They're trying to make a way. They're trying to do something to distract themselves from the drudgery of it, right? Drinking beer or something. But then traveling to hunt and it being the opposite to where I was up seeing the sun come up and really seeing that topography change as you drive and paying attention to it and watching how the country changes, going from like say riding 40 or something all the way across. I found that incredibly eye-opening as well, but still the same thing. Like people are people wherever you go, and it's just these like stylistic differences. Right. I was texting my mom because you said Southeast Iowa, and I was like, man, I got a cousin who's got a farm up there, and I asked my mom where at, and she just texted back and said Burlington.
Oh, that's 45 miles from me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I've got so my pawpaw, my mom's stepfather, was like a farm boy from Iowa. Uh-huh. They called him Red because he was like red hair and like this, like Irish descent kid. He was an iron worker. but that's where he's from up there, man.
Yeah, it's 45 mile east of me, east and north. Yeah.
And so, that's interesting to me because in my mind, the further north you go, like when Brad told me that you came down every year to trap beavers here, I was like, why would he come from Iowa down here? Is it just an opportunity?
It's the opportunity more than anything. And y'all have got more beaver than I have.
Really?
That and it doesn't freeze up.
Okay, sure.
So when I get froze out at home, I can come here.
Okay.
I made myself that promise. My first trip to Arkansas at 17 years old, I made myself a promise right then that I would never chop ice to trap a beaver again. And so far, I've kept that promise.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you might get, I was down here one time in 1997, I believe it was, and it got bad. I mean, bad cold.
Mm-hmm.
It was the high here in southeast Arkansas at that time was 10 degrees above zero for 10 days in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we were sitting at a buddy of mine's house here in Dumas and watching them in Des Moines, Iowa, throwing glasses of water out of the upstairs window, and it was crystallizing before it hit the ground because it was 20 below at home.
Yeah. It was a 30-degree difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we'll get freezes, and I would say that we've gotten more. So I've been in Arkansas for, 24 years. I came here in 2001. Like, my first day of college was September 11th. And it has gotten, it seems like it's getting more regular. Like, we'll have colder spells. Because it may be the first 15 years I was here, man, it maybe snowed like 2 or 3 times. And
right.
Now it's kind of being a little bit more common. But, yeah, generally 20s is kind of about the coldest that we're going to be dealing with.
Yep.
And until yesterday, I pulled my trap line. I just ran a trap line for a week. I'm just doing it as a hobby. But that was the first time I'd ever had my traps froze in. And it was weird, too, because I was looking. You could still see where critters had been just from, like, where ice had shattered and refroze, or like there'd be bubbles or stuff underneath. But I'm sure it substantially shut it down.
Yeah, it's slowed way down since it got cold here.
But now it's bounced back up. It was like 50 today.
Yeah, it's fixing to get good again. And they'll go back to moving.
Is there like an optimal temperature you're looking for?
We like it around that 50 degrees in the daytime and stay up there around 35 or above at night. That's when we seem to like it the best here. So
when you're saying you're here with your buddy
I'm
Mike?
here with my partner, my trapping partner, Mike Houck from Last Step Trap Supply and Hide Tanning.
Do you guys do most of your trapping together?
We do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we start in Iowa. We come, in November. Our season opens up there the first Saturday in November, and we start trapping raccoon at home because that's our animal. We live in the Corn Belt, so we've got coon. We trapped at home for 3 weeks. And we didn't go at it hard. We played. I mean, literally played. And we caught 510 in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And then we jumped down here right after Thanksgiving. And we've been here trapping beaver. And we'll go back home Sunday on the 21st. And have Christmas with the families and that kind of thing. And then by about the first of the year, we'll be in South Louisiana for 30 days or roughly. We'll go back home for just a few days. And then we'll come back here in February. And then by then it'll be time for me to start. I could go back home and trap beaver at home and I may go catch a handful just to say that I did, but more than likely I'll go to bottling and labeling bait and lure to get ready for this year's conventions and sales and that kind of stuff.
It's okay. And so then, like, once springtime's hit, you start doing like a circuit of giving demonstrations.
Right.
And
Mike and I put on Beaver Fest, which is a trappers convention we put on there at Fairfield, Iowa, right there by home. Last year was the first year of it. This will be the second year. Really great time, really great turnout. A lot of knowledge there. We get some of the best trappers in the country, and they're putting on demonstrations and how they do things. It's just going to grow and go. It's going to get bigger as it goes. And then we'll have a lull in there for about a month and a half or 2 months where there won't be anything really going on except he'll be tanning fur and I'll be bottling and labeling lure and getting ready to gear up, getting ready for the National Trappers Convention, which has moved around the country. It's mainly in the Midwest is where they have it. This year it's in Indiana. And then once that starts, then it's every weekend for a long time that we're gone, hitting conventions, different states. And we just love it. We just love going and meeting people and meeting other trappers and just have a ball.
So, also I think probably a theme in this podcast is, and it's like, it's part of like the intro to it, but it's talking about like the blue collar work ethic. It's talking about people that are using like a combination of their hands and their head to make a way for themselves. And I think with that largely, or a lot of times what that entails is, what I think maybe sometimes gets pejoratively called like hustling. Like you do different things to cobble a living together, right? Like I do that. Like I do some guiding, I do some classes, I do like I just did this wild game cooking competition. I write articles. A lot of times I've got to go and do like remodel work or landscaping or whatever for people. And just try and put enough together to make a way, right?
Yep.
But so you're trapping and then you're moving into these seminars and stuff. So, and if any of this is like, oh, I don't want to talk about it, tell me if it's too personal. But like, I'm imagining that. So you're making income on selling furs, right?
Yep.
And then you're manufacturing lures and baits and you're selling that stuff, right?
Right.
And then like getting paid for speaking engagements. Is there any of that, or is that usually like a catalyst to sell lures?
Usually it's through personal instructions. I have trappers come to me that want to take the years off of the learning curve. So
really?
They'll come to me for instructions.
Mm-hmm.
And and I've heard both sides of the deal. Well, this so-and-so went and took instructions from so-and-so, and there's nothing wrong with that. Your parents paid to put you through high school.
Yeah.
You paid to go to college.
Sure.
Doesn't matter. You come to pay me to take instructions to figure out how to trap, or to maybe you're having problems in an area of your trapping. So you come to someone like myself to help you get over the hump or around the corner, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it just takes years off of the learning curve.
Sure.
What's your education worth?
Yeah.
It's the one thing they can't take away from you is what you know.
Well, then, and you still have to go stomp around.
Right. You still have to apply that. You still have to take what you've learned and go apply it to your line. And what works for me may not work for you, but you can take some of what you already know and mix it with some of what I gave you or sold you, so to speak, to come up with your own style and your own way of doing something. And that's what it's all about right there.
Well, okay, so that's also a great segue into your YouTube channel. So that's how I first became familiar with you, and it's interesting that you tell me that, like, you're basically, you're offering your services as a personal instruction, because I feel like that's what that YouTube channel is. Like,
it is
a tremendous, and look, we're talking about. We could really get into like the esoteric nature of the nuance of trapping. But like, if you're interested in it and you're trying to learn, I mean, you could really like sit down on your YouTube channel, like pretty much whatever critter you want to go after, right, in the lower 48, and like you could watch a ton of stuff and get very detailed instruction, and then not only see like. Because you're doing stuff in the off season, like I guess in your backyard or something, right?
Yeah.
Showing how to make different sets, and you're talking about the reasoning behind things, why you're using this trap as opposed to that trap. Like for beavers, talk about using like a high jaw trap as opposed to like a lower one or whatever. But then also, like you're making videos now, right?
Yeah.
As you're running trap lines.
Yeah, actual trap line footage. Yes.
People can see it in action.
Right.
And, even to speaking about that, you're trapping beavers in a way that seems very different than what a lot of people do, because if I remember this correctly, like you said, you've only got like 2 or 3 conibears.
Right.
Like
So
you're doing a
that's
lot of,
I did have, yeah.
Okay.
I did have. And that was, I took a hiatus there from going to other states for a while. I didn't travel anywhere. I stayed at home. And
Okay.
the way our laws are written with using the big 330 conibears that you use for beaver, the way our laws are written in Iowa, they're basically useless because they have to be completely submerged underwater.
Okay.
Where here in Arkansas, they just have to be half.
Yeah.
Okay, so to me at home, the 330 conibear was useless. I had like 2 or 3 of them. Now, since I've started going back out of state again, here to Arkansas, Louisiana, those places where I can run 330s without having to have them completely submerged. Between Mike and I, there's 240 of them sitting in a shed up here.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So
yeah,
we're using them again. But generally speaking, yes, I love to use the foothold trap whenever I possibly can.
And snares, you use a lot of snares.
Use a lot
right?
of snares too. If it's legal for me to use and it's available for me to use, and I have the knowledge to use it, I use it. It doesn't matter if it's a foothold, a conibear, a snare, a cage trap, whatever it might be. By being able to do that, it makes you a more well-rounded trapper. And then not only that, it doesn't matter what situation you come up against. You have the knowledge, you have the tools to cover it. You can handle whatever comes at you.
Yeah, I actually found it just this last week. I found some spots where, and this is really kind of, this is worth speaking about too, about like what ethics is, which there were spots that it would have been very effective for me to put a 330 on dry land.
Right.
Like it just, you could see where they had tunneled through briars, right? And that's not legal, and I did not do it. But that would have been a perfect situation. If I'd had snares, that would have been a great situation to put a snare in there, right? It would have been totally legal, right? And, that idea of like ethics is behaving when you're by yourself, behaving like you would if someone was watching.
Exactly.
Right? Which I really try and really, I think generally I'm like a rule follower, but like it would bug me if I had done it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also, and the whole reason is that's because they don't want you to catch someone's dog or something that you're not supposed to catch.
I'm not out there to catch somebody's dog.
Yeah.
I don't want their dog. I don't want their cat. It's not doing me any good.
Yeah.
I can release that animal unharmed and he go on his merry way and everybody's fine. But it's still the idea that I'm not out there trying to do that. I don't want to do that.
And you know what? So we're talking about, old trappers like ourselves. But so we're saying like conibears. Probably a lot of people don't know what those are. So we should maybe just give like a brief description of what sort of traps there are.
Okay, so start off with a snare. A snare is man's oldest way of catching an animal. Been around for thousands of years. Man, first crawled out on the bank or out into the wild. He used a piece of vine and made a snare to catch another animal with. And now we use cable. Very humane. The animal is just tied up. It's no different than putting a leash on your dog. They're just tied up and held there. And
it's like a lasso that is set in such a way that when an animal passes through and disturbs it, it'll constrict and hold on.
It closes down around him, and there he is. He's just tied up. And then we have a foothold trap, which is just exactly like it sounds. That's the one that everybody thinks is so cruel, when in all actuality, teeth haven't been allowed on a trap in use for years. We can't use teeth. They're a smooth-jawed steel trap. And it's actually not much different than putting a pair of handcuffs on somebody. It's just a restraining device. It just holds an animal there by the foot. Interesting fact, though, all of the wolves that were brought down from Alaska and Canada and released into the lower 48 were caught using steel-jawed traps with teeth.
Really?
Because the tooth actually punctured the skin and allowed the edema and swelling to go out of the foot, and they ended up with a better foot when they turned them loose.
Mm.
And that is public knowledge. Anybody can look that up. So the steel jaw trap has been used in a lot of cases of reintroduction of animals, not just the wolf, but the river otter into Missouri, the river otter into Iowa. Were all caught in little bitty number 11 foothold traps, taken out of them alive, and transferred up to their destinations and released back into the wild.
Really? That is interesting.
Yeah. 2003, I worked for the state of Missouri on their river otter research project. And what we were doing, we were trapping them with little number 11 double long spring steel jawed foothold traps. We would take them out of the trap alive and take them to a vet, and they would knock them out and put a radio transmitter up inside their body cavity, sew them back up. I would take them back to my house that night, observe them through the night, make sure everything was going to be okay. They were coming out of the anesthesia fine and everything like that. Then the next day, I would take them back where I caught them and release them exactly where I caught them, so they could do telemetry studies. They were tracking their movements, and it was an interesting experience, and I learned a ton about river otter as far as their movements. You know, we had one young male otter that moved 100 miles in 3 weeks from where I had originally caught him.
That's a huge range.
That's a huge range. That's why I always say when trapping otters, you know, I can pick the place, but they have to pick the time.
Yeah.
Because you never know when they're going to come back through.
And that's what, like, when I first walked in here, I was telling you, I found this otter toilet, which is like, otters have this habit of, like, they'll come up out of the water and they'll make a little pile of leaves or debris or whatever, and they'll like go to the bathroom there, and it's pretty easy to determine that it's an otter because it'll have like crawfish and fish scales and stuff in it. Or I guess they like vomit a bunch too.
Yeah, they do. Yep. A lot of times they can't digest the bones, so they vomit those back up.
But so there's just like up, you know, and here in Arkansas, East Arkansas, you have all these levees because you got flat ground, and then you have these levees to hold water because rice is a big crop here, and so you have these crossovers, which is like a trail on the levee from the one piece of water to the opposite side of that levee into the other piece of water. And then, but I was deer hunting, and I was coming on this levee, and there's like, in a 6x6 area, there's like 10 of these piles. And I'm like, and it's all this fresh stuff. I'm like, I'm about to finally do it, man. Cause I have not caught an otter yet. And, I ran them for a week.
Yeah.
And I caught a beaver there, but no otter. And it might take them 2 weeks to come back to that spot.
Yeah, it may take 2 or 3 weeks for them to come back through. Another interesting thing about those otter that I learned in Missouri when I was working on that research project, we started the last week of August is when we started trapping. Okay. When I showed up, the otter scat was full of fish scales and crawfish shells. Mm-hmm. The day, I mean, you could have marked it on the calendar, the day the coots showed up, it went to being full of feathers.
They just started
they just annihilate those coots. They're like a torpedo, man. They hit a coot or a mallard or anything, and that thing just explodes.
Yeah, I mean, they call them water wolves.
They call them water wolf for a reason, and that's the reason right there. They will eat anything that doesn't eat them first.
The way they move in the water is it's almost like snake-like.
Yes.
You know, when I was down there in South Texas, I was telling you that place, like, you know, probably 1,000 acres of it is an old retired fish farm. So there's all these like rectangular reservoirs, and you're just driving down the levees and the roads going where you're going, and you'll see otters running across. You'll see them running down the driveway. You'll see them. And an otter and a 4-foot alligator kind of about the same size. So you'd be getting these flashes. I'm trying to figure out if that's a gator, if that's an otter. And then you'd find their toilets around there.
Yeah.
Really interesting critters, man. But they use a lot of the same topography that beavers do.
Right.
So I think, would you say that most otters are like incidental catches?
Most otters are incidental catches in beaver traps, yes.
Using where beavers cross over dams they make, or they're going over a levee or something, those otters using those same areas.
Yep, they're using the same trails, the same crossovers, and yes. Yep, most of them are caught incidental.
Okay, and so then that would be a great to explain what a conibear is, because that's a modern trap.
A conibear is what we know as a body grip or a killer type trap. And the way it's designed, an animal passes through it, and it goes off, and there's two big springs usually, and hits the animal, generally speaking, right behind the back of the head across the neck. And it's pretty much an instantaneous kill. I mean, they're very humane. There's not much more I can really say about them, I guess. They're just a very, very effective tool and a very humane trap to use.
And they would come in different sizes depending on your target.
Right, depending upon your target animal. Just like a foothold trap, there's different sizes designed for each and every different target species, whatever it might be.
Okay, and then cage traps is what, like, most people would, if you go to the hardware store because you've got a raccoon under your house, that'd be a cage trap.
Then you use cage traps, yes. And then, and now we also have the dog-proof raccoon trap, which is encloses the foot completely so that he can't get to it. Raccoon are known for self-mutilating. They like to chew, and they don't know that they're chewing on their own foot, because anything below the jaws goes numb because the blood is, the circulation's cut off.
Okay.
So they don't know they're chewing on their own foot. They just know they're chewing to be chewing. So, you have some self-mutilation from raccoon. Well, this style of trap, this dog-proof trap, encloses the foot in a metal pipe, so to speak, so that they can't get to their foot to cause any harm or self-mutilation to themselves.
It also keeps other stuff from getting into it.
Right. It's called a dog-proof trap for a reason. It stops the incidental dogs. It stops the, incidental, a lot of incidentals. Basically, what you're going to catch with it is a skunk, a possum, or a raccoon, and that's it.
Because it has to, like, the animal has to reach it has to be a small, because that's probably like what, a
inch
1.5 inch pipe?
Yeah, 1.5 inch opening, I suppose, if it's that big.
And they're going to stick their hand down in there like the same way you would imagine you sticking your hand in a Pringles can.
Right.
And they're like getting bait, and it might be dog food or corn or a marshmallow. And then eventually there's a trigger in there they're going to pull, and then it's going to there'll be like a handcuff at the top of that pipe opening. It's going to hold them there.
Yep.
And that's probably, I would think that's probably what most people that are like casual trappers that want to do some predator control on a piece of property are using.
Right. Yep. If you want to, and I hate this term, but if you want to eliminate the nest raiders, so to speak, then most people would use a dog-proof trap around their corn piles that they're feeding deer or they're baiting deer with or whatever. That's when they would go in there with those to help eliminate the nest raiders, to say get the turkey numbers up. You get your quail numbers up by removing those animals from the equation.
And that's that is actually that's part of like land and species stewardship, right? So like we have, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but in decades past, when people there was like a financial motivation to trap fur-bearing animals, right?
Right.
It kept populations in a manageable state, as opposed to now where there's not as much of a financial incentive, so folks aren't doing it. And and I think it's hard for people to think about this now, but like there are more, if you went to pre-European settlement of North America, there are way more white-tailed deer now than there ever were before.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Same with raccoons.
Right.
Same with coyotes, right?
Yep.
It's especially those animals that do well with edge habitat and do well at those lines of human encroachment, right? So like raccoons do really well. That's why people call them trash pandas, because they're so omnivorous and they're so dexterous and they're so resilient that they can, they evolved to live in the woods, in the marshes, but they can do well in a city.
Very adaptable.
Yeah. Same with, deer, like on golf courses or something. It seems like in England, it's like a fox thing,
Right.
like a red fox thing, but that's an animal that does well there. But when you have those like really high numbers of, and when you're talking about like a possum or coons or bobcats or anything, and say specifically with turkeys or like ground nesting birds, quail, like everything from the moment an egg is laid, everything's trying to eat that.
That's right.
Like everything's trying to kill a turkey for its entire life. So when it's an egg, there's animals trying to eat it. When it's a poult, when it's a young bird, when it's an adult bird. So there has been a movement in wildlife management and just in stewardship, probably in the last decade or so, this push for folks, and probably around that like January, February time when there's like a lull in hunting, for folks to trap and try and remove some of those animals and give those ground nesting birds a better chance.
And a lot of maybe a lot of your listeners don't know, but Delta waterfowl has been a huge, huge advocator of that for years. They have hired trappers in South Dakota, North Dakota, in the Prairie Pothole region where the duck nests are, to remove predators to get the nesting success rate of ducks up to, so y'all have more ducks to shoot.
Yeah. Which is, I think folks don't think about that with like a duck either, because, ducks every year, they go through a molting phase. So there's like a week, 10 days, 2 weeks every year where ducks lose their feathers. If you have backyard's chicken or something, you'll see that too, where your chickens are molting. But where ducks are losing their feathers, and they lose their flight feathers, and they are unable to fly.
Right.
And so they're really an easy target for predators. And then when you have this explosion of like coyotes or something, there's a real hurting that can be done on them. And, here in the Southeast, especially, our, the quail populations, like they almost disappeared in the late 70s. There's been a lot of work where they're starting to come back, and that had a lot to do with agricultural practices, that edge habitat going away. But then you have this predator uptick, and now we're seeing issues, and it's not all because of predators, but we're seeing issues with turkey numbers really drastically falling.
Right.
Specifically Arkansas. Like Arkansas's had real problems. They've made some changes, and we're starting to get some better turkey numbers. But there's, this is something that I think is uncomfortable for a lot of people that kind of have that disconnect from if you want to call it like an agrarian lifestyle, or like living off the land, or, hunting and fishing and farming and stuff. But like all of this is a dance and a balancing act.
Absolutely it is.
And we really threw the balancing act out of whack with like over hunting, and, there were some extinctions, we almost lost bison, wolves, mountain lions, bears, all that stuff. There was a balancing act with all that. And so now that stuff is out of the natural balance, like human beings have to step in and serve some of those functions.
The cruelest thing we can do to wildlife is not manage it. That is the cruelest thing we can do, simply because of, disease, starvation, mange and rabies and all that stuff. If we don't step in to, as you say, balance it out, it's going to be devastating. It really will be to the wildlife. So, like I said, the cruelest thing we can do is not manage it.
And ethics are totally involved in this. It's the same reason that, when we talk about hunting deer or turkeys, you want a quick, ethical kill. It's still taking the life of something, but you want it to be as quick as possible.
Absolutely.
And, I've heard this before, and it's 100% true, is like, there's no quick, easy death in nature.
No.
You're either going to be eaten alive, or you're going to starve to death, probably. Right?
Or a bad disease.
Yeah. Or
such as distemper, parvo, mange, anything like that.
Yeah. We're seeing it in whitetails, CWD, EHD, stuff like that. So, and I'm saying that because I want to acknowledge that I understand, because my understanding of this has evolved over the years, that, trapping can be, I think initially the idea of it can be bothersome to some people. But when you start to look at it in a holistic manner, right? And you look at something that is, you're helping to manage a population, you're trying to restore some balance. There's stewardship involved in that, right? And you're also talking about like a renewable resource. Like, and it took me a minute to get that in my head, but the fact that fur is a renewable resource.
Absolutely it is.
Right? And people who trap, like, the last thing you would want to happen is to, like, there be fewer and fewer beavers for you to trap.
I don't want to be responsible for taking the last beaver.
Yeah.
Not that I ever would, but I don't want to be I don't want to be the guy responsible for that. And nobody does. Nobody today wants to be responsible for taking the last of anything. You know, that's not our goal. That's not why we're here. As you've said, and you know, our deal is to help balance nature. And then you look at it from, like, the reason I'm here is from an agricultural standpoint. These farmers need help because they're losing thousands of acres of tillable ground and crop because of beaver damage. That's why I'm here, you know, is to help these farmers to eliminate their problems, because beaver causes not only so much in agriculture, but also in the road department as well. They cause so much damage as far as flooding. You know, beaver is a great and wonderful animal when they stay where we need them to stay and do their beaver things where we need them to do their things. But when they start damming up road culverts and washing roads away, and they start, you know, flooding out live timber and killing it, and they start flooding out crop fields and stuff like that, then it's, you know, you have to do something. You know, something has to be done then.
When you're down here, are you and Mike, is most of your efforts on private land?
We are all strictly on private land.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We're strictly on private land.
So this is an invitation. These folks want you here.
They want me here. Want us
You're
here.
Providing a service to them.
Right.
And then you're able to monetize it by selling the furs.
Right.
Okay.
Right. You know, when we go to Louisiana, it's the crawfish farmers.
Yeah.
Because the raccoon, the mink, the otter, the nutria, the beaver, anything that will damage a crawfish pond levee or eat a crawfish, we have to take it out.
Otters will wear crawfish.
They're devastating to a crawfish farmer or a fish farmer at that.
Yeah.
You know, they get in a fish pond, you get 4 or 5 otters in a catfish pond, and they'll wipe it out. And then they move to the next one, and they wipe it out. And by the time you realize that you've got a problem, they've already moved on to the next ones, you know, somebody else. So, yeah, it's as you said, it's a balancing act, you know, and you have to stay vigilant, and you have to stay on it, you know, in order to keep that balance going. And once anything gets out of balance, then you've got problems.
Yeah. And, you know, we absolutely set stuff out of balance. And so now we have to step in and try and restore that.
You know, and it's, you know, and then there's the other aspect of another type of trapping, and that's the animal damage control. You know, you get a raccoon in your attic in your house. Mm-hmm. You're not going to set an extra plated supper table for it or pick a name out for it. You're going to call somebody to come in there and remove it. You know, so there's that end of it as well. And there, you know, that's a whole separate type of skills and a whole separate type of trapping, you know, to take the squirrel out of your chimney or the coon out of your attic, and then to go in and do the exclusion work on top of that. And that's something that I don't want any part of.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a fur trapper by trade. That's what I do.
Yeah. That's funny because I've kind of got this thing going on where I'm like, I think for a lot of folks that I know, I'm the only person that is that like hunts and fishes and traps, and so like I've got people that call me and they think that I'm the solution for everything. My little sister, you know, the rest of my family lives in St. Louis. My little sister's got like some squirrels in her attic,
right?
And you know, I like went home for a couple of days. She's like, I need you to get these squirrels and fix this. And I was like, I mean, I can do it. I'm happy to do it for her, but I'm like, I can't go in there in one day and deal with this problem.
Right.
And some of the stuff, you know, is also like the time of year.
Yep.
Because they might not be in there. I mean, they're in there probably right now because it's the wintertime.
Right.
But spring, when they're kitten in spring, they might be out in a tree. But yeah, that's funny. And I have helped some folks out, and I've caught some stuff.
Yep.
Because some of it is also just the willingness to be a little uncomfortable, which I think, modern man has really lost. Just, stomping around in cold water or sticking your hands in cold water.
We have become so far removed from the earth that it's not funny.
Yeah.
It's not funny.
And dude, I'd argue even with like hunting, like, this is, I need to be tactful with how I say this. There's, anyone who watches any of the hunting shows, follows these brands, brands that I've worked with and worked for, right? It's a constant push to sell you stuff. So they're constantly trying to convince you that what you have is not good enough and you need to spend money to have better stuff, right? And then style and looks and all this other stuff comes into it. And really, my impression is largely trappers are on the opposite end of that. They're really focused on that hard work, that woodsmanship, that reading sign. There's not like cool clothes for trappers to wear, right? And so like trappers, like talking about someone like yourself, a professional fur trapper, you're focused on the work,
yes,
as opposed to the appearance of it all, right?
Right.
Which, like, there's a disconnect. There can be a disconnect in that.
Yeah.
Because there's even, and I keep bringing them up on this episode, Brad. We've talked about this where you've got a person who, they work in an office. Maybe they really only get to like go deer hunting a couple weekends. Maybe they go on a duck hunt. And so their way to involve themselves with it is they scroll the internet in their downtime and they like buy stuff, right?
Yep.
As opposed to being out there. I've tried to model my life to where, maybe even to my wife's occasional chagrin, like I'm less interested in money and more interested in having time and opportunity.
And that's funny you bring that up, Jonathan. I tell people this all the time, and I sincerely mean it. I don't make a great living, but I lead a hell of a life. And that's worth more to me than anything else.
That's hugely important, because I'm honestly, I'm in the throes of it right now, because it's like I've got an 8, a 6, and my boy will be 3 in a few days. And, I've got a baseline of responsibility that I can't avoid. Right. Like if it was up to me, I'd live in a van.
Yep.
And I would bebop around and, I'd smell worse than I do, and I'd kind of have like I'd avoid a lot of people and I would just stay in the woods, which I get to do lots of that now. But like, there's a baseline of like, I need to be at home. I need to cook dinner. I need to take those kids to school. They need to have their lights on, all that kind of stuff. But there's also a level to which I am not willing to go to a 9 to 5. I'm not willing to work for some middle management idiot, right?
Been there, done that.
There's sacrifices that come with that, but man, there's amazing stuff that can come with it too.
Right.
If you then take that time and use it for something.
Right. I don't, everybody has to do what they have to do, and everybody has their own path in life to choose. This is just the path that I chose. It's not for everybody. Not everybody could do this. But I'm awful glad that I can and did,
That's really great to hear. It is. I wonder, are you willing to talk about like what sacrifices do you think you have had to make to lead this, like kind of extraordinary life?
Well, just like you said, I don't have the 9 to 5, My work day doesn't stop at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I might still be in the shed skinning or bottling lure at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I've missed some birthdays. I've missed some Christmases. I was married for almost 20 years. Ready-made family. She had 3 kids. Love them with all my heart. They're mine. But I missed some stuff. There's no doubt about it. Just simply because I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
there's not much more I can say. Just that. You don't have the retirement, you don't have the benefits, you don't have any of that out here like this. You're basically working without a net.
Yeah.
And not everybody can do that. And that's okay. We're not all cut from the same cloth, and that's okay too.
Sure. And look, it's unsettling sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
Sometimes I'm like, ugh.
When I walk out the door in the morning, I know I have to catch X amount of stuff just to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And then anything after that to be profit.
Mm-hmm.
There's days you don't do that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Would you do it even if you knew that you weren't going to pay your bills?
The only thing I would do is go a little harder than what I have.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man, honestly, I'm glad that there's people like that.
Yeah, there's no backup, no quit.
Yeah.
Just go.
That's and when I say an extraordinary life too, that doesn't always have to mean that you're like on a rocket ship out in outer space. I mean like extraordinary, like actually that, like outside the bounds of ordinary. And exactly what you're talking about is that.
Yeah.
And it is but really and truly, I very much believe that the world desperately needs people like that. Because I mean, I'm sure you've seen this as you travel around. It used to be, even 20 years ago, you'd go from, if you drove from Iowa down here, right?
Yep.
And you'd stop and get gas. There'd be like a mom and pop restaurant. Like towns would look a little more different. Now there's a homogenization, right? Like it's the same chain restaurants. There's kind of the edges, the frayed edges are getting smoothed out. And so like there needs to be people that still have that, that kind of like mountain man spirit, right? That like willing to go out there and just hammer out a living. And it's funny because of where we're at. The first, I got a buddy that told me the first time we ever were down in Star City doing something, he was like, man, it takes a big hammer to pound out a living down here, man.
Yeah, that's right.
But there needs to be people that are willing to swing that big hammer. Hard segue here, but you spoke about something in one of your videos that was fascinating to me. And it's, I grew up with my dad, and I've talked about this podcast before, and I think it had a huge influence on my life. I grew up like with my dad on Sundays. We'd go to church, and then we'd watch, there used to be this stage called USA, and on Sundays they would play like old Westerns, like, the Rifleman and Ponderosa Bonanza and stuff, right? And my dad was like a big Louis L'Amour book guy, right? And so I just grew up watching Westerns and reading Louis L'Amour books and stuff. But the thing that I always, like a lot of kids want to be a cowboy, but the thing I always leaned more towards was the mountain men, right? I thought that was so cool. And I've read a lot about them, but you're the first person I ever heard like talk in detail about how they trapped. Because I had wondered that even in Jeremiah Johnson, like that quintessential film, I feel like they showed a lot of it, but they didn't really show in detail how he was trapping. And you said something on a video talking about that mountain men, conibears I think were developed in like 54.
Yeah, in the 50s, yeah.
Right?
Frank Conibear,
yes. Literally where they got their name from. But so before that, it was all footholds and snares.
Right.
And the mountain men maybe had like a half dozen
to 10 at the most, traps.
I mean, think about that. Heavy steel. This is before coil springs, if you have seen a trap. So this is long springs, right? And they're carrying everything. They got a skillet. Maybe they got a mule and a horse if they're lucky.
Yep.
And they've got to carry everything they need to live, and then they got to carry an entire season's worth of furs.
Right.
But so and there wasn't cable, so that means they were using chain.
Traps and chain. That's what they had.
Heavy stuff.
Yep.
And then, but so they were catching everything.
Well, and where I come to that was trapping beaver.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so most people who trap beaver drown their beaver with either a fiberglass or a steel rod that the chain runs down and it's got a locking device on it. It goes one way. It goes down into the deep water, and then when the animal tries to come back, it locks and it won't come back.
Yeah.
So the beaver, technically they asphyxiate, but we call it drowning. Okay, so they drown.
Well, hold on, because that's actually an interesting point. They hold their breath until they're overtaken by CO2.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Yes. Mountain men didn't trap them that way because they didn't have drowning rods. They didn't have slide cables or wire. They had traps and they had chain. Well, if the mountain men could do it way back then, why couldn't we do that now? And it's nothing new. And I'm not the one that developed this system. Like I said, the mountain men did. And then there was a famous trapper by the name of Johnny Thorpe from the Adirondacks in New York. He did the exact same thing. Craig O'Gorman out in Montana did the exact same thing, but they did it with a different twist to the method. Okay, so Johnny Thorpe's favorite method of trapping beaver was with a number 2 coil spring Northwoods brand trap on 2 feet of chain. Well, the reason he used such a lightweight trap and a small length of chain, a short chain, was because he was walking back into the Adirondack Mountains, so he did it for weight purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Craig O'Gorman on the other side of the spectrum was using a big old Newhouse 114, which is a monster of a foothold trap. It was actually a wolf trap on 18 feet of chain. Well, he was able to drive up to his places. Okay, so I've kind of come into the happy medium there between them, and using a number 3 coil spring trap with a tall jaw, as I said, you mentioned earlier in this podcast about, in my video. And I hold them alive by the front feet on 10 feet of chain or 10 feet of 1/8-inch cable, and I don't drown them. Not because it's not ethically correct or ethically humane or anything like that. It's just because I don't like to tip the rest of the beaver in the colony off as to my presence being there. And when they start seeing dead beaver laying around in traps at the bottom of a drowning apparatus or in a conibear or something, beaver are very smart. And it doesn't take them long to notice things, and they set up. And you will literally shut a colony completely down by doing things like that. Or with a live beaver up on a bank, just chilling, hanging out, they don't pay any attention to him.
It's just they see a beaver.
Right, they see a beaver
looking like a beaver.
Right.
But I guess it would be kind of analogous to if you saw someone in your family like hanging outside on the deck, that doesn't surprise you. But if there's like a dead person in your door,
right,
you're like, man, I don't think I want to go in that door.
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the same principle, same deal. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the way I trap beaver. And like I said, it's not anything new. It's not anything that I came up with. Everybody calls it, or a lot of people call it the Billingsley method of trapping beaver, and it's not mine. I've just brought it to light, so to speak, I guess, more than anything, with my own twist to it, just like everybody else has done.
Yeah. That's, I'll tell you, so me and Buddy Brad, man, we developed, I'm doing quotations, this way of catching beavers. And his last name's Green. My last name's Wilkins. We call it the Grilkin Stick of Death. And I'm sure that people have done it before, but there's also something to that, too, about those constant adjustments and trying to figure out just a way that works for you or in that situation.
Right.
And we figured this thing out because there was a place we were trying to trap, and like one side we were doing a dam break and one side was way too deep. Like we were having to like lean over and do this thing, but it was very sheer, so there wasn't a shelf.
Right.
So we had to kind of figure out how to like manufacture a shelf. But I really like the and I've been using conibears, and I've been using footholds and like a drowning a cinder block or something on this drowning cable, and it's just And, I do a lot of I'll trap on public land with a sled, and, I might walk a mile and a half in.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Trying to take a cinder block or something in.
Dragging weights or packing in 10-foot pieces of rebar for a drowning rod or something, Yeah, when you can just walk in with some traps that's got 10 feet of chain or 10 feet of cable on them and make your sets and go, sign me up.
Yeah, it does make a difference. And like you said, I'm not catching – I'm catching a handful of beaver. And so I'm also, prioritizing table fare too is important for me. So I don't want, if it's warm, if they're going to die, I want them dead down in the water, staying cold, or alive where they could be fresh, right? Because I'm really trying to take care. I'd like to preserve the hide and have that to make things with. But then I want those hams, like a big beaver, like that belly.
Oh yeah.
That belly meat, you can 100% cure it like bacon.
Right.
And you can make beaver bacon.
Oh,
and it's really great.
It's great. It's great.
And then, there's other stuff, man. If you're going to boil out your deer skulls for a gyro, you can do a beaver head the same way. And it's really a pretty striking thing to have on a bookshelf or to give to a friend. Weird kind of esoteric things like that, they actually matter. And
so there is an actual whole market for all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think that Mike Yancey guy, right?
Right.
Keeps.
And Mike and I used to play into it too. We used to try to sell the skulls, the bones. Right now we've got a lady that wants the beaver feet. And what they do with them, I have no idea. I don't care.
Yeah.
They do their thing. I do mine. Live and let live, anything, there is literally a market for every part of that animal if you want to take the time to market it. You can even market the innards, the intestines.
Really? For what?
Yes, you can. If you was to build a couple of bunkers to hold sawdust or wood chips and throw those, any leftovers into there, it will cook it down to basically nothing. And then in the spring, you can sell that as high fertilized mulch.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. And I know people make, they'll tan the leather on the tails and make wallets and stuff out of it.
Well, and a lot of your high-end saddles for horses have got beaver tail leather up on the swells and then back on the fenders as well.
Really?
Yeah, you can tan those and you can get really good money from saddle makers for those per side of the beaver tail.
Man, so you really can just
you
everything
can
off
literally
of there.
Market anything and everything.
Which is honestly, man, that's infinitely respectful of that animal. You
Absolutely,
know what I mean?
It is. Absolutely.
Man, that's really cool. So I'm trying to think. We're probably at a fairly good stopping point. I've just got a couple of questions I want to ask you that I'll ask you off recording.
Okay.
Specifically about something I heard you say the other day about when you've got beavers, you've got bobcats. Because that's a bobcat's just a fascinating creature to me. And what's so neat to me about this one of the neat things about trapping is that there's all these different, I'm a process guy, so there's all these different skill sets to learn.
Right.
And every time you're learning one on top of another, I feel like you're getting your toolbox is becoming bigger. And I've been able to transfer exact knowledge from trapping beavers and raccoons to catching alligators to being able to take black bears with a bow in the woods. Just being able the skill, the speed at which I can walk through the woods and see sign.
Oh yeah.
I used to have to just crawl around to find stuff, and when I'm bear hunting, I kind of try and slip fairly quickly, but I'm keying in on stuff I didn't used to be able to key in on,
Right.
And I bet you could just drive yourself to distraction walking around.
Yeah, and you'll get to the point, too, where you can actually do it looking out the truck window at 55 mile an hour down the road.
Yeah.
And you can see, okay, there's a pinch point. There's where the coyotes are going to cross. There's a raccoon trail in the road ditch. You'll be able to, you'll get to where you'll get that.
And there's also just like there's a similarity in the way that animals, people too, use terrain.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so I used to be a fireman, and they talked a lot about pinch points too, right?
Yep.
Those are dangerous places as a fireman, like where your hose can get stuck or you might get caught. But it's all the same things. That's dangerous for a deer,
Right.
Looking at a deer in a big giant field is interesting, but like you want to catch them where they're going to enter that tree line.
Right.
That's that pinch point, right? Or like we talked about catching alligators, and I was catching them on the inside turn of a bend in that bayou.
Right.
And it's, if you're fishing, that's a great place to catch fish.
Absolutely.
There's just a way that animals like to use topography, and trapping lets you, it's like the most micro version of it, because you're trying to figure out where an animal's going to put its foot.
Right, exactly. And that's all I'm trying to do. That animal has X amount of acres to be in, and I'm just trying to get him into 2 square inches. I just want his foot into 2 square inches.
Which is, the skill set involved in that is phenomenal, right? And it's, I talk a lot about woodsmanship, and that's the skills, and I'd say like it's a pretty common theme with hunters is that trappers often make some of the best hunters because they understand how animals move, and they can figure out the right place. If they can figure out where that 2 inches that they want an animal to put its foot, then they can figure out where they want to be able to intercept an animal.
And I made that comment to you the other evening on the phone, and I didn't mean to sound disrespectful when I said it, but you're absolutely right, because all trappers can hunt, but not all hunters can trap.
Oh, sure, yeah. I think that's just astute. It's not disrespectful. But Dale, man, I'll tell you this like seriously, man. I am just tickled pink that I was able to come down here and visit with you, man. I know I'm annoying my family watching your videos every night after dinner, but man, me and my boy, it's something we've enjoyed, man, and my daughters, which they and it's not like a boy-girl thing. It's just like they think I'm more of a goober than he does because they're older. But like they're all picking up on this stuff, right? And like that's kind of what I want for them. It's like I don't expect my kids to like go and catch alligators and stuff when they're 40 years old. But just having familiarity with this, like not being intimidated by the natural world, not being grossed out by eating these things. Like they're being raised on beavers and gators and bear meat and stuff.
And it's a funny deal too, Jonathan, because none of my kids trap.
Really?
Now they like to go with me, but none of them do it on their own. I've got 2 boys and a girl, and none of them do it.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because when it comes time, and that's my biggest thing, is when it comes to a vote, I know they're not going to vote against me.
Yeah. And they might be able to be a conduit for people. Say like, hey, my dad does this, man. I was raised on doing this.
That's
like this, and this is the reason why. And look, people are allowed to be uncomfortable with something. Yeah. But to understand that there's that this isn't bloodlust, to understand that there are ethical and conservation reasons behind this, and also like even on a like a more fiddly diddly version of this, like it's good for the world for people to still be doing this stuff.
That's absolutely right.
And as long as they're doing it in a legal, respectful, ethical way, like I think it's good for the world. Like this is part of what, for better or worse, this country was settled largely
with fur. Because of fur.
Because of fur.
Yep.
And so there's something in the bones of this country that's tied to that. And I do think that if it was lost, you'd be losing something inherent to the fabric of the nation. And man, I'm glad that there's still people like you out there, man. And I'm super appreciative that you're being so willing to share your knowledge. And I'd like to plug your YouTube channel, which is it's just like, if you just, and I know this because I did it the other day, if you just type in Dale Billingsley Trapper,
Right.
right, on
Right.
YouTube, or what's the actual name?
The actual name of it is Billingsley Brand Trapping Lures.
Okay.
Okay, if you type that in, then my YouTube channel will pop right up.
And then if there are folks that are trapping already, I mean, you make a really large range of lures and baits.
Right. Yeah, I carry a full line for every critter out there. You know, as far as whether you're trapping beaver or coon or coyotes or bobcat or whatever it might, even marten. I've got, lures and baits for all of it.
And so if folks want to get a hold of that, how would they get in touch with you?
So I do some mail order myself, but this time of the year where I'm busy trapping, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
But there are several dealers that do handle the lures and baits for me that you can contact. Cumberland's Northwest Trapline Supply in Owatonna, Minnesota. Coon Creek Trappers 2.0 in Pennsylvania. Last Step Trap Supply and Hide Tanning in Iowa, and Tombstone Feeders in Mississippi. They're more than happy to they all have websites, and you can go on there and scroll and look around, order anything you want, and they're more than happy to send it to you.
Fantastic. Well, Dale, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I really appreciate you taking the time to come down here to visit with me.
More than happy to. And folks, thanks for listening. And in tribute to Dale here, man, if you'd give me a 5-star review, that's all I'm asking of you. We'll see y'all next time. Thanks.